Chair and members, maybe just to bring you to the expenditure component, I think on general public service, we've noted that the 2022 budget has allocated 86.4 million, which represents 49.9%. And as PMRC, we are actually concerned with the high debt service financing that's been allocated, which accounts for 45.5% of the total budget. So this is actually also restricting the budget allocation towards other important services or sectors rather, such as health, education, and social protection, which all four, maybe for education and health, according to the Abuja Declaration, the budget allocation towards education is 8%, and the protocol which we've signed to has a threshold of saying 15% of the total budget must go towards health. With regards to education, UNICEF has put up recommendations to ensure that the total national budget at least accounts for 20% of the total budget. But because of this high fiscal constraint that we have with regards to debt financing, we're actually falling short of some of these pronouncements. But I'm pleased to note, as PMRC, we've been championing for an increase towards social protection, because it's quite hard in uplifting livelihoods and also protecting the welfare of the most vulnerable in society. And I think there's been a tremendous increase to that account. So we've seen an increase to about 6.3%, which is about 3.6%. And according to international protocols, I think we also fall suit, because the minimum should be 3.5%. So for that, we actually commend government for putting in place that budget allocation. So we just move to tax measures. And I'm sure maybe we just quickly go to the most important tax measures, beginning with the proposal to reintroduce the deductibility of mineral royalty for corporate income tax assessment purposes. So previously, mineral royalty was non-deductible according to the corporate income. So we find that the mining sector will actually heavily burdened with regards to payments, which also increased the cost of production and also made our mining tax regime unfavorable as well as uncompetitive. So with the scrapping off of this, we'll be hoping to see more people within the mining sector. And also this will also facilitate for the to ensure that we meet the standard 3 million metric tons per annum that the minister had proposed from the 800,000 metric tons with regards to copper. And also we've noted that government has proposed to maintain the 15% corporate income tax. That's according to the hospitality industry. And I'm sure this was introduced within the 2021 budget, also following to the COVID-19 pandemic that had majorly burdened most people in the hospitality sector. We even saw from the Auditor General's report on the status of tourism, where we had many players in such being out of service, and also we saw a number of job losses. So we as PMRC actually commend government on this regards. So now just coming to the fiscal framework. So the 2022 fiscal policy agenda aims to progressively reduce fiscal deficit to sustainable levels while promoting growth that generates jobs and reduces poverty. And to achieve this, government will employ a combination of revenue mobilization, administrative reforms, as well as expenditure measures. Maybe just to begin on some of the measures that were put across within the 2022 budget with regards to revenue mobilization, government intends to increase domestic revenue to at least 21%. I think we had noted that in the 2021 budget, domestic revenue only stood at 18%, so this is actually a good move as PMRC in ways of enhancing domestic resource mobilization. And also, we also look at it in terms of these other tax measures that have been put in place, because we know that when you ease the cost of doing business, we see more job creation. When it comes to expenditure, government will reduce areas of wastage of resources in the budget and channel them to other needy areas. And we've also seen that government will strictly enforce the provision of the Public Procurement Act number 8 of 2020. So this will also help with regards to ensuring that there's no wasteful expenditure. And one of the other things that we are elated as PMRC to note in the budget is the issue that government desires to expand the coverage of the financial management system to district levels and also develop a standardized local authority financial management information system framework. So from the Auditor General's report, I think in terms of local authorities, we had seen a lot of challenges that the Office of the Auditor General was facing with regards to an harmonized financial management system. and also to see that the CDF will be undertaken by local authorities. I think it's cardinal that we put in place effective mechanisms to ensure transparency as well as accountability of government resources. So now, Chair, I think I'll just move on quickly to debt management. I had mentioned to say that our debt management is unsustainable, and as it is right now, about 78.7 billion will be channeled towards debt financing, which accounts for 45.5% of the budget. And as measures of debt management, I think government has put in place very effective measures, beginning with the fact that government will not contract further external non-concessional loans except for refinancing existing debt. Then concessional loan debt with a longer repayment period as well as low interest rates will be explored. And the current Loans and Guarantee Act will be repealed and replaced with a new Loans, Grants as well as Guarantee Act. So this act, or the bill rather, actually aims to enhance transparency in public debt management, including loan contraction. So I think the policy direction is actually there, but what we need is effective implementation. So we're looking at it in terms of all these debt measures that have been put in place as well as tax measures. If they will be effectively implemented, then we'll actually have a growth within the economy. Now moving on to the sectoral analysis, I'm sure the previous 2021 budget actually was anchored on the 7th National Development Plan. So for the 7th National Development Plan, the budgeting was put in line with the 5 pillars of the 7th National Development Plan. But for the 2022 budget, we have seen that there are 4 thematic areas in which government will intend to execute its budget, which is economic transformation and job creation. There's human development and social development, environmental sustainability, as well as good governance. So just to mention maybe on a few aspects, we'll start with agriculture. As PMRC, we have noted to say that the budget allocation towards agriculture is normally below the Maputo Declaration, which states that 10% of the national budget must be allocated towards agriculture. And as it stands right now, only 3.7% of the total budget has gone to agriculture. So for going forward, we do understand that this is constrained due to the high debt financing, but going forward, we're hoping to see an increase towards this sector. Also bearing in mind that it's the largest employer in Africa, in Zambia rather, and so we'd like to see more allocation towards this sector. And for this, one of the concerns that we have noted as PMRC is the suspension of the E-Voucher system. According to the ERP, government intended to migrate the farmers on the Farmers Input Support Program from the traditional direct input supply to the E-Voucher by the 2022-2023 farming season. But as it is right now, it's been suspended. And we had noted as PMRC to say that the E-Voucher was proven to be more effective compared to the direct input supply. So foregoing, we actually would recommend that government actually reconsiders and also just puts in place the E-Voucher system. Then we move on to mining. I think for mining, I touched on it in terms of the tax incentives. We're hoping to see that this relief that has been put to the mining sector also bring in more investors and also ensure that we have a competitive as well as a stable mining tax regime. As for Zambia, I think one of the problems that we've had with this sector is that of being uncompetitive. We even have investors opting to go to DRC due to the favorable investment environment, and yet Zambia, I think, has better investment opportunities as well as the environment per se. So when we're moving on to infrastructure development, I'm sure the budget has actually from the past 2 budgets to now, we have noted a decline with regards to budget infrastructure towards the budget allocation towards infrastructure. But one thing that we have noted to say is that government will this time ensure that there will be project appraisals that will be done with regards to ensuring the level of infrastructure that they will look into, and there will also be a benefit, a cost or maybe a benefit analysis that will be done to ensure that the infrastructure that is there is not only for by merit of having infrastructure, but also to ensure that we reap the positive benefits of that. So going forward, we actually urge government to ensure that most of this allocation that's towards infrastructure should go to rural development so as to reduce on developmental inequalities. I'll end here, Chair, but my colleague will quickly also run through other points that are there within other sectors. Thank you.
It has been key in the economy in Zambia for a long time, and in the 2022 budget, we've seen that government aims to resuscitate the multi-facility zones. We are all aware that the multi-facility zones, most of them have been white elephants with low investments. So one key thing that we've noted as PMRC is a reduction in investment threshold for Zambians from 500,000 to 50,000. This is one thing that we encourage more Zambians to invest in the multi-facility zones. And then also government has also introduced some tax holidays for up to 10 years for investors into the multi-facility zone. This one is very commendable, but we recommend that we should ensure that there's a necessary separation of tax for different monies that is earned. Since this tax is on profits, we must ensure that those who are going to the multi-facility zones, their tax holidays are on profits that are earned from exports as opposed to profits that are earned from within the country. Coming to the tourism sector, we've seen that government is extending the waiver of customs duty on safari game vehicles, tourist buses and coaches to 31st December 2020 for selected tourism enterprises. This one is key because it's a way that the government is trying to use to boost ecotourism. Ecotourism is part of the tourism sector. That is important to ensure that the sector also is recovering from the COVID-19 while it is being badly hit. Another thing also is putting in place a robust tourism market to incorporate all tourist products, including traditional ceremony. This is good and it's part of the implementation of the tourism master plan that the government developed to ensure that there's robust marketing of all tourism products in the Zambian economy. Another key thing that the government has proposed in the tourism sector is the construction of the Cassava Airport, which will also encourage the opening up of the northern circuit. In the health sector, while we've noted that there have been an increase in the nominal budget allocation, but we realize that the percentage allocation in the budget sector has reduced from 81% last year to 8%. PMRC is also elated that the government seeks to employ 11,200 personnel, which is key as the country is recovering from the COVID-19, where we saw that our health sector was defeated during this period. Key also is the construction of infrastructure in the health sector and the completion of some of the health facilities. This is one key that we hope the country will recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Coming to the education sector, we might also be aware that the percentage allocation in the sector has reduced from 11.5% last year to 10% to 10.4% this year, while the nominal allocation has increased to 18.1%. So the key also, as government increases the value, they should also increase the percentage allocation towards the national budget to ensure that we meet some of these international protocols that we are signatory to. Government also seeks to recruit 30,000 teachers in 2020. This is a huge number at the cost of 1.7 million. So on this one, we're really elated as this will help reducing the teacher-pupil ratio. And the 120 secondary schools to be financed with the loan from the World Bank is also welcomed, as most schools in rural areas are not completed or there are no schools at all. Coming to the energy sector, we've seen that government is proposing cost-reflective tariffs to ensure that we attract more private sector investment. But while government is intending to do this, we recommend that there is need for government to first wait for the cost of reflective tariff study to really show if the payments that people are making now towards electricity are cost reflective or not. Coming to social protection, we've really seen an increase in the allocation for social protection. While there's an increase, we realize that the percentage allocation has also reduced from 4% last year to 3.6%. And one key reform that government intends to do in this budget is a reform of the pension scheme. This one is key because a lot of people have been crying concerning the pension schemes, the pension funds that exist. But since government has been silent, the budget is silent on what kind of reforms they intend to do. As PMRC, we recommend that the reform should start with NAPSA. NAPSA being a biggest pension fund, there will be needs to reform NAPSA to ensure that people get value for money, and in order to also ensure that people after retirement are not left as destitute. You realize that the life pension does not really benefit anyone. There is need for them to allow people to get part of their lump sum at retirement and then enable some of the money to go as life pension. Secondly, you'd find as somebody starts their job, they are starting their job less than 30 years old. and they've got like 20 years to retire. And if you look at our salaries are not competitive. So for somebody to be able to build, you find it's not able. So there's also need to ensure that NAPSA consider lending some of that money to people to build those who are in formal employment, to ensure that people are not left destitute, to continue looking at the salaries that people get. Another thing is that the budget has said that there is needs, they are trying to reform the social cash transfer to make it more effective, but it's silent on that. So as PMRC, we've been pushing to see, are they able to make social cash transfer to be on an electronic platform in order for them to reduce administrative costs. We are aware that 15% of the money allocated to E-Voucher, social cash transfer, goes towards administrative costs. So it's better to learn best practices from the managed cash transfer that was implemented during COVID-19 in order to ensure that there's value for money also in that sector and there's no wastage. In the transport sector, government intends, has realized that there's need to build more roads and to rehabilitate some of the economic roads that have been placed, like the Livingston-Sesheke Road. And as such, we implore government that they intend to take the way to use PPPs. It's important that they take the route for PPPs, as infrastructure has been one of the causes of the debt situation that we are in. And as such, we hope that as the Act is being repealed and replaced, it will also ensure that there's proper benchmarking of some of the projects under the PPP, and it will also ensure that it spells out the maintenance mechanisms of the project, like the maintenance sharing mechanisms between government and the private sector, to ensure that there's value for money and there's also sustainability of some of these projects that are being implemented. Chair, thank you very much.
Okay, I didn't get the first presenter very well when it came to issue to do with E-Voucher and direct import support. Was she's suggesting that the E-Voucher was better than direct support from imports. I just wanted her to clarify on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you look at the E-Voucher in comparison to the DIS, you realize that a number of redundancies were actually curtailed. So I think in as much as we have gone back to direct input supply, we should be able to know that studies have already shown that E-Voucher is actually much more beneficial to government, especially that we are looking at a resource envelope that is small. So it cuts out quite a number of costs, as my colleague has mentioned, but also for farmers that it allows for crop diversification in terms of what a farmer can do. For example, a farmer, instead of getting seed maize, because we are merely trying now to promote the aspect of monocropping maize, because that is what basically farmers will be given. They will be given one maize seed and 6 pockets of fertilizer. But now with the E-Voucher, they are at liberty to choose. They can get insecticide, they can get other forms of inputs, and including livestock inputs, and diversify their way of doing agricultural business. So I think we need to think about it, and probably if there were leakages in the E-Voucher administration, we need to look into it and curtail and reform some of the measures to ensure that we continue avoiding stiffening the treasury.
That PMRC seems to be, nodding or celebrating the drive towards increasing domestic mobilization. My only worry, and I think it's a good thing, my only worry is we seem to be pressing our already stifled, employees. Unless from the PMRC point of view, there's been, the broadening of the tax base. Because if we look domestically to raising more of our revenues, it means that we are going to be suppressing the already suppressed employees, which for me doesn't call for celebration, because we are actually going to be, punishing our people. I don't know from your study, has there been any proposed, broadening of the tax base such that then we should be celebrating this increase towards domestic revenue mobilization. Thank you.
Just need a clarification on the manufacturing. I don't know whether there's any mechanism you have in place to protect the local market. Because it's a good thing that we manufacture, but we have a competition from people bringing items from outside which are cheaper. And in most cases you find after that incentive, 10 years, then that shop, whatever, they close. They come back again in a different form, different name, to start all over again, start to get the incentives. Because most of the Zambians who are running this, they are just merely funds. They are not actually the owners of the businesses.
Side, so we need to ensure that our laws are tightened up to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen. Then if I can also speak about the Continental Free Trade Area, which is also going to see us open our markets to the rest of the continent, what they've actually done in that agreement is that they've said that certain industries in your country can be designated as being sensitive, which means that they won't be opened up for a certain period of time. So we'll have at least 10 years in which we can protect those industries, ensure that we build them up before we're forced to open up to the rest of the continent.
The introduction of the technical environment. The main aim is to ensure that these companies are competitive. But our major investors in this area are foreigners who get the inputs from other countries. So meaning they make payment to the suppliers, which is using transfer pricing. How do you reconcile their profitability with the introduction of new royalty? Because most of their suppliers are foreigners. So meaning they will be making losses through transfer pricing. So meaning the country will be suffering because they will be, most of the money will be going to other countries through transfer pricing. Good.
There was no production for the mining sector. But since we are trying to move to first increase exploration from already existing mines, but also explore other new mining industry. So key that government should consider, one, is to ensure that these new mining sectors, most of the suppliers should be Zambian companies. So it's a matter of, can I say political government, like the boldness in some of these things. So what we need is the boldness to ensure that government, because the mining sector for a long time has been twisting us. So while one side the mining companies are twisting us, to ensure that we bash them. But even us, on the other side as Zambians, we can put something to ensure that opportunities for supplying to mines are given to Zambians. Then the issues of transport pricing might be curtailed. That is one. And then for those who are trying to open up new explorations, there are some mines where we do not even need foreigners to come in and mine. There's also need for us, civil society, members of parliament, to also push to see how can we ensure that some Zambians join to also be in the mining sector and also at least also help with some of the exploration, especially as the country goes into opening up new mines.